you're now dating a guy who is trying to express love to you in an emotionally healthy way, but because you're not used to that, you see him as like a beta, and then you start pushing him away. Most of my friends are females. When I talk to them, very frequently I'll have a conversation with them, and maybe you've had a similar experience where they say, I'm dating so-and-so. And so-and-so is an NBA power forward or a famous rapper or whatever. And then but you look for any sort of public acknowledgement of them dating. And it's very clear they weren't dating. He just fucks her whenever he's in town, but she tells us they're dating. They'll be like, oh, I used to date this billionaire, or I dated so-and-so. And it's really interesting because what happens is, in her mind, because she's dating him, every other man she dates from that point forward has to compare to the one time she had sex with Drake. And so now we have this issue. This has happened more than 100 times. I've seen this happen, where a girl is basically like, she ends up meeting a guy who legitimately is interested in a serious committed relationship, is communicating with her in a healthy manner. But like every time there's a fight, she gets a DM from the male stripper she used to have sex with, who has no interest in being in a committed relationship. And she starts believing that because she had sex with this dude who's a power forward, every guy has to be at that level. The number of women who choose men who are over 6 feet tall, 14% of the population are over 6 feet tall, 1% of the population is over 6'3". And I hear women, they'll say like, that's the only thing I'll tolerate. I won't have anything other than that. We have women frequently come on here, and I ask them, I'm like, what do you think the average man in the United States makes? And they'll be like, oh, he makes probably 120, 140,000 a year. And I'm like, no, it's $36,000 a year. How tall do you think the average man in the United States? We had one girl on here. She's like, the average man must be around 6'2", 6'3". No, the average man is 5'9" in the United States. And I'm like, what do you think the top 10%, the top 1% of wage earners in the U.S. make? And they're like, oh, like 10 million a year. And I'm like, no, it's $400,000 a year. That's the top 10% of wage earners. And they're like, we show them these stats, and the women are still like, no, he must have six-pack abs, a humongous penis, be 6'3", and all these kind of things. And like, when you explain to them, there's 70,000 of you for every one of him, they don't hear it, and then they get cheated on by these dudes, and then they're very confused by why this whole situation happened. You illustrated it very similarly by saying these women are trying to get after these top 1% of men.
Yes, but also men have a lot of that issue as well. So again, it's both issues. The ones who are walking around constantly complaining about the other genders because they're not looking from within and why they only go on specific things. So it's not just all women are.
Oh no, I was going to get to the men, their delusions as well when it comes to like
only yeah. I'm a nice guy. Why does no one want me? They're most likely, if you have to keep saying you're a nice guy, you're probably not that nice. But B, those same guys are the ones who keep thinking that they want then the Victoria's Secret model. They're also not, quote unquote, settling for the nice girl who maybe doesn't have triple D's or double D's, and she's not as tall as a model, and she's just like a nice girl. They also think that when they say I'm a nice guy, what they really mean is I'm a nice guy, so I deserve a Victoria's Secret model. Well, why would a Victoria's Secret model want to be with you if you're not as tall as her, and if you don't make $1 million, because that's what she's used to dating?
Yeah.
I have never been into focusing on looks, because I definitely think that's just a little more shallow.
Of course.
And that's definitely not, eventually looks fade. Plus my dad is an inch shorter than my mom, and they're still together.
So internally we say things like we're all special, and your mom tells you how special you are, and my mom told me how special. When you go through a breakup, your friends are like, oh, they weren't good enough for you. But then there's the actual real world out there, and like what you said before, if you want a Victoria's Secret model, what have you done to deserve that person? And that's the same thing for both genders, but yet they think that they deserve that thing. You're now dating a guy who is trying to express love to you in an emotionally healthy way, but because you're not used to that, you see him as like a beta, or you see him as a simp or something like that, and then you start pushing him away. I thought that was really interesting. By the way, men do the same thing, but I was just curious, like, has that something you've seen personally? Because I thought that was a very interesting insight that you had.
I don't know if I said the word beta or simp. I don't think that's what I said, but I talked about the fact that everything is based on how you feel about yourself, and this is for men and women. So if I don't feel good about myself, I will then be more drawn to people who will validate that feeling subconsciously without realizing. So I have a friend, and she was in a relationship where she treated her partner like shit. Mm-hmm. And now she's in a relationship that's a little toxic, and he treats her poorly. Sometimes, they do it to each other. But I tried to explain to her that the reason is because she kept telling me, I feel like shit for how I treated my ex-partner. He deserved better, blah, blah. I'm such a good person. I don't deserve a good person. And I'm like, this is why you're with this current partner, because this guy secretly validates how you feel deep down about yourself. So until you fix that, you're going to stay with this guy because he keeps making you feel exactly how you feel about yourself. And that's like, so then it's the same thing. If I feel like about myself it's going to be hard for me to date someone that shows me love. If either one, I don't feel that way about myself, then it's going to look foreign to me. Or B, I grew up in a household where love, I either had to chase it, or love comes out only toxic. Then if you're showing me healthy love, it's not going to feel familiar to me. So I'm going to think, oh, that person's being needy. That person is overwhelming me with their emotions. That person's being too much, when in reality, they're just being healthy. That person's just trying to love me, but I don't know what it looks like because I've never seen it before.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was that dude in my early 20s, and it caused me to change and not become an asshole, but to set boundaries a little bit more clearly in my relationships. And then one of the things that happened later on in life was I would date someone and I would tell them like what my boundaries were. And when I didn't change for them, then they would say, not to me specifically, but I've seen this happen with other women where they're just like, my boyfriend was a narcissist. And I was like, no, your boyfriend told you exactly what the relationship was going to be like. You didn't accept the way it was. And now that he's moved, he's kept his boundaries. Now you're calling him a narcissist. I had a psychiatrist on here, or I had a family therapist on here, and she was like, she agreed with me. 75% of women who say they dated a narcissist just dated a guy who wanted to cheat and was a bit of an asshole, but he wasn't actually a narcissist. And I think you made a clip similar to that.
Yeah. Again, obviously you talk more about dating women. I talk more about dating men.
Sure.
It's still the same. I struggle with people taking trendy TikTok words and then just making it everything, whether it's, let's say, okay, here's an example. If you and I right now were having a conversation and I didn't work on my daddy issues. So right now you and I are having a conversation. So because I didn't work on my daddy issues, I walk around thinking that all men think they're better than me and they just want to put me down. So you and I can have a perfectly normal conversation, but because I have not worked on myself, I will then be projecting, and then I would leave this conversation being like, he tried to belittle me, he tried to put me down, he tried to act like he's better than me, he was gaslighting me the whole time. And that will become my reality, which is so scary. And there's a lot of people on this planet that walk around with a reality that's not real.
Yeah.
Because of their wounds from inside and everything that they haven't worked on. And it's the same thing with the whole narcissist and these other words. Research shows there's only 1% to 2% of narcissists, diagnosed narcissists in this world.
Yeah.
In the world. It's still a large number, but it's most likely 5 of your exes are not narcissists.
Right.
It's impossible because, first of all, most narcissists don't even go to get diagnosed because they're too self-absorbed. But secondly, narcissists don't even have empathy. And I believe that when you try to self-diagnose these people, you also give them too much credit. Because when my ex is a narcissist, you're basically saying that he couldn't help himself to not give a shit about you, versus saying, and because he has a medical issue and that's why he was a terrible person, versus just saying that person didn't fulfill my needs because they genuinely just didn't want to and they didn't care. I think that's even worse. For me, that would help me get over someone faster, to know that they just genuinely didn't give a shit about me, versus, oh, but they have a medical issue.
Yes, they have a cluster B personality disorder, which now gives them an out. Exactly. I totally agree with this.
Empathy. So they literally can't feel empathy for you.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. So if you guys look in the DSM, there's these things called personality disorders, the mad, bad, and sad. Cluster B are the bad ones, and that's going to be histrionic, antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic, and the last one is borderline personality disorder. About 5.9% of the population have borderline personality disorder. Of those people with BPD, 40% of them are narcissists. 100% of people who have antisocial personality disorder also have narcissistic personality disorder. And then there's a difference between people who have NPD. People who have NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, had to have gone to a psychiatrist and asked for help, meaning you had come to the realization that your narcissism was causing some sort of dilemma in your life. And then there are narcissists who do not go get diagnosed, and that's a different number. So regardless of what those numbers are, some people say 2%, some people say 5%. Dr. Martha Stout has a great book on this where she talks about the difference in those cluster B personality disorders. The point is, narcissism is a neurochemical reaction in your brain, and some dude who wanted to fuck your sister does not necessarily mean that they are the same thing. And so we throw these words around, and what happens is when we do that is that when you deal with an actual person who is a psychopath, is a narcissist, has borderline personality disorder, or has histrionic personality disorder, you end up conflating some dude that you met at the bar who ghosted you for someone who is actually possibly a serial killer. And that's where I think these things get really, 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 you water down these words by conflating them. And these words actually have meanings, and we don't understand those meanings, so we just throw that word out. And I think that's dangerous.
I think people are still, overall, things are evolving and science is changing. People are constantly still studying a lot of these terms and definitions, and things overlap. That's why when you said this percentage and then it goes into this percent, it's the
Yeah.
same thing. People getting mixed up, whether they're dyslexic or they have ADHD or they have anxiety and depression. A lot of people think they have ADHD, but they actually just have anxiety because a lot of these things overlap. So I think people are just really too focused on trying to diagnose everyone else and not focus on themselves, and just, we're human and we're all so different. And there's so many unique and different things about us, but I don't go throughout my day and be like, oh wait, why did I just blink twice in 3 seconds?
Yeah.
Do I have this type of disorder? I'm just like, okay, that just happened. It is what it is. And I keep going.
Yeah.